All right. Welcome everybody to the latest SSC meeting of the Baseline Protocol community. Got a lot of people on the call today. We'll get into minutes and all of that sort of thing right now. Hi everyone. Hi Anish, Thomas, Gavin. For folks who can, it's always great to turn your monitor on so that folks can see more than just a couple of faces, but understood if you cannot. Not everybody's had a chance to take a shower yet today, so. Right, so we've got—
a shower, what is that?
Yeah, what is this shower of which you speak?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Andreas, it's good to see you. All right, we've got a lot on the agenda today. I'm gonna switch over to, I'm gonna share screen here. And go to our current minutes. That was August 3rd. I'll actually move those over now. So the first thing on our agenda is every 2 weeks is anybody that wants to introduce themselves or say hello to the community, please do so now. So if anybody's new. We've been doing this a while, so it's getting less likely that somebody hasn't been here before, but if you have and you'd like to say hello to the community, please do. All right, and we'll go over the minutes. I put the minutes up on the general Slack channel earlier, and hopefully people have had a chance to look at those from 2 weeks ago. And if not, we'll review them now. Oops, I'm in the wrong one. It's giving everybody a good chance to say hello while I fumble through finding the correct minutes. So don't be shy.
Hey everyone, I said hello before, but I think
Alesh,
I
yes.
should say it again. Alesh here from Trustworks. Great to be part of the community. Big thanks to John for all the amazing work. I have to say I've now got a chalkboard coming so I can replicate his amazing background. And long and short, yeah, we're working on developing a regulated gas payments function for enterprise. So if anyone's interested in being able to pay for baseline fees in a kind of compliant fiat-based mechanism, give us a shout.
Thanks, Alesh. Anyone else? All right, I've got to pull up my list of participants here. Hi, Nick, how you doing?
Good, getting the ball rolling on a very hot and sticky day here in California. We had like the leftover of a hurricane blow through this weekend, and it's all humid. It kind of feels like Florida or Hawaii. So it's very interesting.
That is
early Monday morning.
It was sent with love from Texas, probably.
Okay. Well, as everybody knows, this is the meeting that we do. This is our forward-looking meeting for the Baseline Protocol community. But very quickly, we'll look backward to the 3rd of August. There was quite a lot discussed. We're not going to go through all of it. Obviously, the big news then was Coke One North America, which just continues to excite everyone. I don't know about you, but I hear it from somebody every day. Wow, if they're doing it, let's do it too. People talking about sponsorships, getting involved, that people that never were talking about getting involved before. So obviously that was a watershed moment for the community, and it seems to be playing out that way. Anybody want to say anything or comment about their experience with that since the 3rd? If not, cut me off if you want to. Otherwise, I'll just keep going and not introduce a pause there, just to get through the minutes.
It was great to have Kona and the Provide and Unibreak teams on the Baseline show on last Wednesday. So if you didn't get a chance to catch it, the recording should be available, right, John?
That's correct, and it's in the link right here. I managed to put that in, so you can go and see the link. Watch that. I would lop off about 6.5 minutes of the first part of that live stream. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't let you edit out the mess at the beginning of a meeting and live streaming without losing continuity with the people that have already watched it. So it's not great. So yeah, just so you know, it's kind of boring until about 6.5 minutes in. We have an amendment that was made on the TSC meeting, which is the correct meeting for this sort of thing last week. Technical Steering Committee, reporting to the Project Governance Board of the Ethereum Oasis project. That was a mouthful. Has approved the 26th of August or thereabouts for the release, the official release of the baseline protocol v0.1. If you haven't already seen the work on that, you can look at it in init core branch in the baseline repo. And it's quite a bit of work. In fact, one of the things that, you know, if you're new to baselining, if you look into the repo, you see this kind of long tail of tapering off commits over the summer, which looks like it's going, you know, the community is kind of going down. But what's been happening, and this isn't awesome, hopefully this won't happen again, is that a lot of work has been going on off the main branch. And now there's this big bolus of code that will make it much easier for everybody else to start contributing improvements all over the place. It'll be very obvious where one could make a mark and add an improvement, get on that list of voters and contributors, start making a name for themselves in ways that really are much more straightforward than they were up until now. So this is a big deal, and that's the date that we've set, the 26th of August. There is a ton of news happening this month. So I've been working personally overtime with a number of other people trying to make sure that we don't collide with anything that would steal focus from our work. Still working on that, and I might propose minor changes here and there going forward, just to, as I hear about different things. If you hear about different things, please let me know so that we can do our best. I mean, there's no way to avoid all news, but short of something about COVID or something like that, you know, if it's in our space and it's happening, and you think that we should know roughly, you know, we can do that under NDA or under embargo so that we aren't outing any particular thing. But we're going to try to coordinate with different groups. I know of at least 2 or 3 pieces of news that we want to make sure we stay away from. Okay, or at least we want to try. At the end of the day, things are going to work out the way they'll work out. We reviewed community metrics. We've now broken well past 600 active members since then. So we seem to go up about 10 members a day or a week. Actually, yeah, at least 10 members a week. And we discussed baseline protocol performance measurement. Mark, effectively, we went through a bunch of stuff. IC3, security team work from Stephen and Eric Breivik and others. So go back to that video if you'd like to rewatch that. I always like to watch it at 2x speed. It's easier. And it's actually how I get the minutes done. So just blast through that with a 2x speed with the forward key. You can do it pretty quickly. Any dissent on approving these minutes? Okay, it shall be noted that these minutes are approved. Next item on our list, are there any additions to the minutes or to this agenda today? Are there any things that you'd like to discuss? I know of a couple of things already, so please vocalize now, or raise hand or put it in chat. And by the way, going forward, it's really useful if folks can, before Monday, before the SSC Monday, anybody that it has ongoing work to signal myself or somebody involved with setting up the agenda, or just simply going into this to the the SSC item in the repo, which pretty easy to find. Right here, TSC and SSC regular meeting agendas and minutes. Issue number 88 in the baseline main roadmap. You go in there, you can add agenda items in advance so that we can prep and know that we have the right amount of time. So please do that going forward if you can. Anything else? Anything that any folks would like? I know, Anish, you want to discuss the standards process that's going to begin in September in earnest. So I've added that. I've added some announcements about more sponsors, an initiative around scaling, and we just discussed the final target release date. Anything else? I know there's a ton of work going on, so it actually is really good if you are ready to discuss any of that work. Otherwise, the SSC call looks pretty bleak. So do not be shy about your work.
Well, John, I talked about proposing an EPIC around this whole idea about IoT authentication and inputs. I don't know if this is an appropriate place to talk about that, or whether it should be baked more.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. And no, I mean, this is the point of this meeting, is to discuss things going forward, things that people would like to, might like to get involved with. A lot of people watch this after we tape it. So knowing that that's on the agenda is important.
Well, this whole concept, I mean, and I kind of just embedding this at this point, is this whole concept of sort of adopting a metaphor of shifting left. Not within a coding perspective, but within authentication perspective, such that you're shifting authentication left towards the edge in terms of trying to authenticate and secure data earlier in the process before network transport. We've definitely gotten traction within military and zero trust community for that kind of thinking. And it would seem that for trusted automation like baselining, having that type of data secured earlier in the process of collection before transport is something that it feels like a best practice. But I just don't know how to kind of propose that in sort of a vendor independent way. I can kind of model it in the way that we would do it. And maybe that's the way to start the conversation, but at least the concept of using trusted elements at the edge is something that maybe belongs in an EPIC somehow.
That's quite interesting. As you can see, I'm writing this up, David, and please, there's a lot of folks on the call, but everybody seems to be very polite today. So I think you can get your word in if you'd like. So,
John, we have the EPIC around NIST and FIPS compliance, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Is there like organized work around that yet, or no? Is it just a placeholder?
There's an EPIC on it, and that's a good segue into the next part of the meeting. In fact, unless there are other things that folks would like to go over.
Just a brief update on there's in the telco industry there's a standards organization called MEF, And there is an incubation project around supply chain for automated data services that is going to encompass also a different option of how to use DLTs. So in replacement of business processes within a telco, or augmenting it, and that's where baseline comes in as an option. Not obviously, because telcos are moving at glacial speed, which is still faster than governments on a public ledger, but at least on a within a gated community.
Awesome. Is there an action item there for that, Andreas?
No, this is simply an update. I can create an epic around that, but that work is driven outside of the baseline community. I just wanted to update everyone that.
Is there a place that we can go for more information?
You can go. Let me try to
throw a link in there, and I'll put it in.
Let me try to see if it's a MEF incubation project. Let me see if I can get
Hey Andreas, by the way, while you're doing that, where's your I can't find your GitHub ID in here. Is it under something else? Sure
no. Yeah, I'm in. It's there can be only one 1969.
All right, can't find it. I'll fix that later.
Okay.
Additionally, a brief note, Andreas and I spoke, this is Bill Gleim, Consensus Health, earlier since our last session, that in exploring the applicability of baseline for Avalon off-chain compute, work order requests and work order responses. It's still in early conversations and an open area of development. And if anyone is interested in representing Avalon off-chain compute work order requests or work order fulfillments via baseline, please get in touch with Bill Gleim, Consensus Health. Thank you.
That is a very interesting project. I have to think, given some of the folks that helped found this organization, including, our friends from W3 Cloud, and a lot of trusted off-chain compute folks in this organization. So yeah, I'll add your name. Contact Bill Gleim. I think it'd be huge to have somebody from the baseline community over there as a regular on the Avalon work.
Yeah, Andreas and I are both there, and in addition, at least one or two members of Envision Blockchain, and GitHub handle is just the @ last name.
Right. All right.
Sorry, I was just going to ask Andre quickly, in relation to the DLT with the telco industry, what kind of telco services are you guys looking at targeting?
This is standards work. So this is across. This is not vendor specific. The initial work that is being done is around settlements, wholesale voice and data on demand, as well as roaming. But that is, again, that's very initial, those are initial POCs, and they use a more traditional DLT approach where you actually put various forms of records on chain, just using private channels. But there is significant concern within the telco community that DLT is disrupting existing implementations. So if you, I don't know, you're not familiar with that, but if you implemented data services using standards such as MEF, then you have a set of given APIs that are integrating within the different with the different partners, right? So you always have bilateral relationships, even though the data service might span 6 or 7 providers, right? From one point to to another. So that those are, so you know, that is where everybody thinks like DLT can help, but it's how do you integrate that without upsetting, you know, a few $100 million, $1 billion of investment, aka the apple cart, and if you want to do it the right way. So that's where this discussion is coming in and saying, you know, your first step, you know, you don't have to burn everything. First step is augment existing APIs with on-chain proofs that you can validate, that avoids the issue of having orders or fulfillment not aligned with the actual commercial agreement. So that's the impetus there. So you're augmenting existing APIs by extending the payloads, rather than wholesale replacing things, which is more of an issue. The upshot there is that everyone in a in a chain, right, across like 6-7 carriers can now validate each other's proofs, and you can say, you know, hey, if you're transporting from one to the other, right? So you're ABC, you're B between A and C, you can include now your proof of A and B into what C is getting, and then C can validate that they receive the appropriate, that everything is according to existing agreements, SLAs, etc.
Andreas, this reminds me of the pattern that the advertising industry is looking at as well. I know that MadHive and some other folks have been working on a protocol that mirrors that follows the baseline methodology pretty closely, and I think that we're going to see them come in as a sister project in the near future. So, but it has the same shape, so that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that the real challenge, and that's generally true, is unless you have a net new process, right? Something net new that is either still very manual, so you're not, but as soon as you have something that's already automated or semi automated, the resistance to adoption is enormous. So
yeah, that's a very good point. And if you don't mind, I'll use that as a jumping off point.
Sure.
The next section, which has a lot to do with where we go from here. So actually, before we go into that, Kyle Thomas, if you can give us an update on where we are at with, this is the final SSC meeting, we should hope, before the release of V0.1. So we'll go into that briefly, just because it makes sense to go there, and then we will go into what do we need to be doing after that big release, and what, Andreas, what you just described is one of those things. We really need to talk about scaling and how to get into production before everybody just starts using something else other than the public Ethereum network or some other public mainnet. So with that, Kyle, do you want to say a few words, please?
Sure thing. Excuse me. Yeah, so I think we're on track for this release. Just finishing up some documentation and some content John and I have been working on to make the onboarding process a bit smoother for everyone. should be pretty good content. Looking forward to compiling all of that toward the end of the week, getting it ready. I think we're in good shape to coast from here in terms of the code base itself is in good shape. It's sort of all downhill from here. So certainly looking forward to the release and getting feedback. Yeah, should be a good couple of weeks for us.
All right, I'm putting up the init core library now. Folks should know that Kyle and Karthik Silparam and others, and Sam Stokes, and folks have been on with me for a few, so I think now 5 sessions of videotaping where we've gone through the code and what developers are going to want to know about how things are changing and how they can get stuck in and understand the work. I think it's going to be a great series of short videos when we're finished. And
I concur.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. They've been fun to do. And hopefully relatively little editing to be done there. So if anybody wants to know, it's all in init core today, and we'll push what? Kyle, do we have a date now?
I think it's the 26th, right?
Well, that's the official announce. I understood it
from
from
the merge date. Yeah, it'll be before then. Could be this week. Could be this week.
All right, so keep your eyes peeled on that. When init core goes to main, that's when you can start to move your code over to be using the main branch, even before the announce.
Can I ask a quick question on that with the scaling?
Yeah, actually scaling is on our list of topics. So yeah, go ahead and preview.
Great. This is Kirk with Block Nerd. So I'm just curious if any of the projects are looking at parachains for for syncing or looking at using that as a scaling solution.
I'm just waiting for somebody else to answer before I.
You mean Polkadot?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you thinking its own parachain or connected to Edgeware? In terms of the Polkadot ecosystem, so Edgeware being one of the smart contract chains.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a question back to you. Did you hear it, Kirk?
No, I didn't catch the question.
So I was just asking, in terms of the Polkadot system, are you thinking about creating a baseline parachain in itself, or more looking at connecting baseline to something like Edgeware, which is one of the smart contract solutions within the Polkadot ecosystem?
It's just something we were looking at the storage solutions there, so we were experimenting with it, and just curious if anyone else was working with it.
Kirk, I haven't heard of anything, but I mean, yeah, this is a protocol, so anything goes. I've even heard of some bunch of other chains were making noise last week about how they would be the right chain to use for baselining, and I'm like, look, I'm a Ethereum partisan, and I work for Consensus, but that doesn't stop you from coming in and starting to write a reference implementation on your thing. So that's that is to be encouraged.
Yeah, like cross-linking to something like Kusama in that way to test scaling then, John?
Folks, thoughts?
Well, I think those are implementation guidelines. Those will come into what exactly is appropriate or not, will come into implementation guidelines from the standard, right? So you have you will have a standard, and then you'll have implementation guidelines in terms of best practices, and that will by itself filter out certain stacks. If you want to do if you want to follow best practices from an implementation guideline point of view, but that is then obviously going a little further down the road when it comes to certification. the question is, are you following then the best practices from the implementation guidelines? Yes or no. If you're proposing certification, obviously, if you do follow them, then certification is going to be significantly easier than if you don't.
Well, from a scaling perspective, I mean, Polkadot and Kusama in terms of, onboarding parachain, at least is one established path that people could at least test on in terms of a scaling question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can do pretty much any type of scaling that you want, right? I mean, you can do generalized channels for scaling, right? So it's like state commitments. So anything goes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anything goes, but wouldn't you say, I mean, for example, and I've pushed back on this with a couple of proposed solutions, and I'm showing right now on the screen, anybody that isn't seeing the screen, that we have, we do have a MasterEpic now. It's not very well populated yet, but clearly now that, I think let's consider the matter of v0.1 included. Anybody that isn't aware of it, go to the branch or contact the maintainers. But the work is now imminently, it is more or less complete, and now it just needs to be tested out and released. That will be happening in the time frame that we discussed. So now going on to the things that we need to do next. Scaling is right there at the top of the list. Not so much because we need scaling today, but because enterprises are going to want to know that they're not going to run into a dead end once they start going into production. And by the math that we discussed in a previous session, we can do millions of baseline confirmations on chain a month, and that should get a lot of early adopters all the way as far as they want to go. And then, of course, there are batching techniques that you can use, as long as you are careful not to run afoul of sequencing problems, right? So, for example, if you have a master service agreement that has a rate table in it, and you have a bunch of purchase orders that come in after that, if your batching scheme allows for the potential for 2 or more purchase orders to come in and calculate off the same base order number, say, you haven't ordered anything, so your number is 0. First purchase order comes in, it's 100 units. If the second purchase order comes in and calculates from 0 again, you've got discounting problems that you're going to have to reconcile, which was sort of the whole point of baselining in that use case to begin with, right? Was to avoid that sort of thing. So if you're going to do a batching process, you have to avoid problems like that. And are there ways to do it? Sure there are, but you have to be careful. So that's one way of getting scale. And that can rather dramatically increase the number of confirmations you can put on chain. The other way of scaling, of course, and we've been talking with a number of folks that are, founders or close to being founders of the Ethereum core recently, and they have some pretty good ideas. Obviously, ETH2 is very much hoped for, and we're now have a lot of reason to feel encouraged that that's going to kind of start to roll in a more deliberate and fast and predictable pace. A lot of folks in the Ethereum core seem to still want to say it's years away, but others say, yeah, that's because they're sandbagging. So I don't know, but if you look at certainly if phase 0 comes out this year or so soon thereafter, the word is that a lot more work went into phase 0 that was going to come in later phases, and now is all going to come up front, making the way for more phase 2, or so phase 1 and 2 have less work to do and maybe more predictable and more direct in their rollouts. That's to be hoped. We don't need it to do a certain very significant level of work on the mainnet. I do wonder, and I wonder, Andreas and others, what do you think about this? Whenever I hear the phrase, well, yeah, mainnet doesn't scale layer 2. Like, well, you know, the whole point of baselining is to eliminate silos, or a big chunk of it. And so if you say, well, we're going to get rid of your silo over here that you had to set up between these counterparties, but oh, by the way, now you have to set up another state machine that requires provisioning for compute, bandwidth, and storage. And that one is less you know, secure than the mainnet, which was the point of the mainnet. It was to be super secure against tampering and folks locking you out and that sort of thing. Then that doesn't sound like a very satisfying answer to me. I certainly, if I was selling a baseline solution and somebody wanted to skewer me, that's where I would go, or that's where I should expect the attack to come from. So how to scale without introducing the same things or reinventing the same problems that we were designed to avoid is important. I'll stop talking there and see what folks say and think. But to be clear, this is the next big piece of work, clearly, for us. Thoughts?
It's your trilemma, right? So you need to, there are always going to be trade-offs, right? You have speed versus security. It's a trade-off, man. I mean, it's like
a trade-off. But honestly, Andreas, if the mainnet cannot contemplate such a forgiving thing as the baseline protocol for you know, doing what we do, which is far away from back end and far, you know, and very forgiving when it comes to these scaling issues, I don't know what it can be used for. I don't mind saying, right?
No,
so better scale to at least to the level that baseline requires, or what else can it do other than be a store of value?
But wouldn't that be, I guess, the first question is, what's the scale you need on mainnet? Because coming back to one of the things you mentioned, John, around security, you know, you look at stuff like Kusama and Edgeware, and like that's just like not secure today. Like the reason they have bandwidth, it's because they're worth nothing, and if they're worth nothing, then they're basically not safe. And so and you know, not safe, as I think their market caps are in the, you know, mid tens of millions of dollars. I can imagine, you know, an enterprise like Coca-Cola, like the value of their supply chain is like larger than the market cap of those chains, and that's kind of what you get.
The value of one order is larger than.
Yeah. So and that's what you get with mainnet, right? You get like literally billions and billions of dollars of security, which I don't think there's another alternative, you know, out there today. And maybe a way of reframing that to say, okay, if you want kind of this threshold of security, which large enterprises probably do, what's the max throughput we could get on mainnet today, and who is that sufficient for, right?
The math looks pretty good with ETH2, to be honest. I've been looking at it. It looks pretty good there, right? Especially if and there's reason to hope that we might be able to get a execution environment for baselining specifically. So
then you just draw a growth curve from like today. You know, obviously not everybody who's going to use baseline is going to use it today, or in 1 year, or in 2 years, or in 3 years. And then if you draw that curve out, you start to get to a spot where, yeah, the likelihood of ETH2 being around in 3 years is, you know, pretty decent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember.
I also will float. Sorry, John.
No, please.
Okay, so I'll also just float, you know, very quickly that I don't think that, excuse me, leveraging layer two solution necessarily robs you of all of the security you get from the public, from the mainnet or the public chain.
Oh, certainly, that's very fair. The question is, how do you not get hoisted on your own petard when you're saying, "Hey, I've got a new state machine for you," when we just finished telling you about how you should use the mainnet?
Well, it's a question of how does that state machine relate to the underlying chain where you're anchoring the state, right? That's de facto what you're doing, right? So there are well established parameters or characteristics of such state machines that they need to fulfill, right, in order to be viable, where you're your security trade-offs is minimal versus an L1, right? So it's and even with L1, I would posit, and I think I mentioned that the last time, is you know, if there is always the opportunity for extortion attacks. If you know which are the which contracts are baseline contracts, you can target those, right? It's and miners could censor start censoring transactions, right? Simply because they can, simply because they have there are very few mining pools that are generating blocks. So
what I really like about this conversation is it's showing that we're going into a degree of maturity around baseline, the community and the protocol. If we're having this conversation, we're going in the right direction.
John,
so
that's any solution that is utilizing L1, right? So whether that's a DeFi, whether that's a DeFi protocols, because of their transparency, have even bigger issues.
Yep.
Right?
Just find me something that's more forgiving about scaling on the mainnet than baselining. And so, right. So honestly, we ought to be the bellwether to say, if you can't do it for baselining,
Right.
who are you going to do it for? And I think that comes down to a punchline that I'm hopeful that I know that a lot of the ETH core community is paying attention to, which is that, you know, we have the EEA under Dan Burnett is really in the ascendant again, and we are a child of partly of the EEA. We work very closely there. Half of our PGB, our project governance board, is on the EEA. Dan being one of them. So we have real good coordination, and it's time. I think that the Ethereum core community is ready to listen seriously to things that, you know, sensible things that we need the core to do. Attributes, even there may be the requirement for a precompile that might add some scaling for us. And that's something that should be on the table. So this scaling MasterEpic has a lot of meat in it, a lot of opportunity for distinction, a lot of opportunity for people to make a name for themselves in the Ethereum community generally, not just in baseline. And so I propose that as we emerge from the V0.1 release, that a core of people get real serious about that MasterEpic and creating some actual stories and work around it, both research spikes as well as real actual work. As Kyle said, there are ways to do kinds of layer twos, and there's a proposal for something called a shard 2, which would be sort of a pre-shard that could become a shard after release, should we set it up correctly. So there's ways to approach that. I'm not sure that was proposed by a core dev person. I would never have made that suggestion, but they're going to make it, then that means that there are interesting ideas on the table. Can I those to the core development community with one voice with the EEA?
I think, you know, before we can do that, we need to really define what are the security and the privacy requirements.
Speaking of which, Stephen Garcia, are you out there?
Still here, sir.
All right. Well, maybe we can make this a 2-up, because I know Anish and I had a great conversation last week about the launching of the standards work in earnest. We're going to talk about that in a second. But that work really has a lot to do with the security work, also with Eric and Stephen and others. How are you guys doing on that work? I know you had an update last time, so you may not have one now.
Yeah, I met with Kyle last week. We definitely are looking for where we need to add more folks. I mean, right now our primary focus is on what we call the hard stuff, on what we're going to do with ZK, in particular with circuit registries and things like that. That's a pretty tough problem for us to solve. So that's our kind of main focus right now. But any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, call me in. Just rope me in. That's fine. Again, I think even beyond, because a circuit refers to a specific implementation, right? I think we need to take one step back. What are the core security requirements, right? So do any curves that we're using have to be, do they have to be quantum secure? Yes or no? Because that excludes or includes a whole class of solutions. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just posing those questions. Is that
that's a good place, Anish, for you?
Is that a must or is that a shall? Right.
Exactly.
In standards speak.
Right. So standards. I know somebody that's interested in that. So.
Yeah. So yes, with the upcoming release of v0.1, basically it's a great time to start thinking about developing the protocol specifications and leading to the standard eventually. I just want to say back to the conversation earlier about mainnet specifications and characteristics. Those are the specifications that any contribution is welcome. If you go to the standard and specification MasterEpic 99, you will see the list, including protocol specifications, security, standard, and guidelines, as well as the protocol itself, the protocol specification itself. So in terms of the baseline, and so its definition, the core semantics, the key requirements in terms of components, but also looking at the implementation from the interfaces point of view. The goal is really to describe the minimum required to implement the protocol and maintain baseline compliance. So I would definitely invite you to look at EPIC 99 and the different issues under that EPIC. I've started working on the baseline protocol specifications, and Kyle, your code is really well documented. So I wanted to say thank you. It really simplifies and speed up the process. Looking at the init core branch. So thank you again for this. So starting in September, you're welcome. So starting in September, we'll have active working sessions. So there is already a draft document being worked on. There are good conversations happening in the issues as well, if you go. So it's a food for thought, and I think it's a good starting point, basically, to get on and write the specifications and the requirements. Yeah.
Thank you, Anish.
So are there call sequences set up? Are there already the working groups being established around the different topics? I mean, I'm not getting any emails, not getting any notifications. There's no Slack traffic as to that, so it's a bit hard. Okay.
So well, we're gonna start it in earnest when we release, but we're so close to that now that we might, given the timing of the release vis-a-vis the SSC meetings, there's no reason to wait until the following one. So let's call it September 1. Let's get ourselves organized. And then, September 1 or 2, that's when we're going to start those specific meetings, right? So you can't do all of this in these general roll-up meetings. So some working sessions need to be started. Anish, with support from many of us, will get that rolling.
One quick question, Anish. Sorry for interrupting, or jumping in here. One last question. Are you abstracting out from the code, or what you're looking at from the code in terms of what is spec and what is implementation specific?
So there is a big, from my point of view, understanding first in terms of core key components and focusing on the concepts first, and differentiating between concept and implementations. So what is needing in terms of requirement to make things work versus how they are currently implemented. So to answer your question, yes, I am making that, I'm taking those steps in splitting implementation versus the specifications and requirements of the protocol itself, yeah.
I must say
Thank
that I asked Anish if she's from the universe, because I was asking the universe earlier this summer for somebody who was competent and qualified to lead this work, and she just popped out of the universe. So do please thank the universe for us, Anish, for sending you along. I don't know where you came from, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun working with you already, and very dedicated. You want to say if you think, well, you've already said on previous calls, but I mean, Anish has a lot of experience with system integration and engineering. So, you know, really a legit voice for this work. And this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to standards, right?
When it comes to WASI standard writing, it's definitely my first rodeo, but have quite a fair amount of experience writing specifications, definitely. So I've done a lot of post-acquisition integration work for big enterprise, finance, marketing side. And so I've touched upon different domains in terms of enterprise and enterprise architecture as well. So I'm comfortable. I'm very happy because when I discovered the baseline protocol, and it's probably the same with all of us in the call, we realized all of the challenges that we have been faced before and how they could be addressed with the baseline protocol and the mainnet in terms of business improvement, business process improvement, business automation, and just so yeah. As I said last time, I'm very excited and motivated and like all of us. And you could hear in my voice probably like, this is a great project to contribute to. Yeah.
It's moments like this when I know we're onto something. People don't spend their time, good people don't spend their time on stuff like this unless it matters. So we must be going somewhere, everybody. Right. So that's the specifications work. If there, I don't think there could be a better advertisement for getting involved. Andreas, sure do hope you're involved, and many others. I think, Anish, as you go forward, it seems like there's what is, right? That is what we've got in the reference implementation, and then flipping over, there is what ought to be, right? So if we have that dialogue going through, we'll do well. I'm going to kick back over to our agenda, if I can find it, because I have too many screens open now. Agenda. There it is. So that is really the featured project status. Before we get going, we've got 6 minutes left. I should mention, I don't think there's an update to this, but I'm aware now of the race is heating up for first project to show an example or a demo of taking invoice records and tokenizing them. So I've heard now just this morning about another exciting one. I got a dog in that hunt, by the way. So there's more than a few, and we'll see who pops out at the end with the first actual demo, because they're the ones that will get the press release. That won't take away from the other ones, by the way. There's room here for everybody. But other than that, I'm going to go back over to the roadmap, make sure that we haven't missed anything. Go up to the board. There's a bunch of stuff going on the core baseline. But yeah, there's, NIST compliance. Relevant also to specifications and standards. It was brought up by Daniel Norkin and a number of other people this last week that for solution providers, and there are a couple of really notable solution providers, big ones that are coming into play with baselining. They're going, some percentage of the time, to win a bid or to win an RFP, you need to show that the solution is going to be NIST compliant in relevant or salient areas. So the goal is not to say that we have a problem with NIST compliance. It depends on how you look at it, but we want to be able to be sure that somebody can write a slide saying baselining is NIST compliant, or you don't have to worry about NIST compliance with baselining because of this, this, and this. So that's another project that people with knowledge and experience in that area, something to say, might be able to lend a great hand on. And again, please have those meetings offline and report back to the committee. I see that Karthik Slopuram has assigned himself to this particular project, so please contact him or Daniel Norkin. Anything else on that? I'm going to move that into in progress unless anyone objects. And I think we'll move this one into in progress as well, scaling. And as you can see on the roadmap, I put scaling as, the start of scaling work. If I can find it. Is in here somewhere. Just add, yeah, starting in the September 2. All right, that concludes today's fun-filled episode of the SSC. Are there any other issues that anyone would like to bring up? Anybody would like to have the last word?
Yeah, if anyone would, if there's a separate call on scaling, would love to be included on that.
Oh, who is speaking? Sorry.
It's Kirk Ballou.
Oh, Kirk, yeah. By the way, everybody, Kirk has a really cool company. Kirk, have you ever introduced yourself before?
I did on the first call. It was probably 2 or 3 calls before.
A good solutions development team. So yeah, keep an eye on those guys. Block nerds, right?
Yes, sir. In any of the active projects working on identity or IPFS, decentralized storage, let me know. I'd love to see how we could help. For the record, I do not hold shares in Block Nerds, and so if I'm shilling, then it's because it's out of an honest place. Right on. So I think that's about it. Now, 2 weeks from now, that'll be a pretty exciting SSC meeting because lots of things will have happened and lots of things will be starting. So show up with things to say, things to talk about. Just a quick announcement. I won't name names because I don't know that I have permission, but I think 3 different companies now just became sponsors of the baseline protocol. I'll leave it till next time out of an abundance of caution. I'm not sure if they're actually announcing yet, but you know who you are. Welcome. We're excited. One of the things is that is a rule in OASIS is that sponsors get first shot at providing quotes for major releases. So you'll see them on the v0.1 release. And with that, I think we can adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for
Thank you. Back.
Bye.